Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. My name is Maxine. I have Avoidant Personality Disorder and ADHD. And today I want to talk about how I'm trying to move on from immense regret for the way that I have wasted so many years of my life. As many of you may know, I'm 30 now, and I spent pretty much the entire second half of my 20s in like a depressed Groundhog's Day sort of isolated nightmare where I didn't really go anywhere or do anything or talk to anyone. And I feel very stunted now as a 30-year-old woman in nearly all areas of my life because of the lack of growing that I did in my 20s. I also have been in relationships since I was 14 years old and spent my later teen years in a very toxic, unhealthy relationship that set me up to struggle the rest of my life. And I never did the self-exploration during that time. I have a lot of regrets for the way that I spent the years of my life up until this point. And ironically, the shame that I feel as a result of that regret has really made it even harder for me to make changes and improve my life from that situation. I remember a couple years ago, around the time that I filmed We Need to Talk About Avoidant Personality Disorder, I was 28, and the year 30 was looming, and I just remember feeling like the time was slipping through my fingers. Like every morning I woke up and all I could do for myself every day was focus on getting through that day and just like surviving, really just in survival mode. And because of that, I felt like I wasn't able to progress at all. And whether or not that's my fault, I feel a lot of regret for that, and I wish I could go back and do that different. And also I talked about how a couple years ago I lost a tooth, and now this year I lost a second tooth. And maybe to most people that wouldn't seem like that big of a deal, since there aren't like visible gaps in my mouth or anything, and my dentist said that I would be fine without them. But to me, I just really took that as like, I'm too young to be having these problems, and this just feels like the beginning of the end for me. My 20s were supposed to be my best years, and now it's all downhill from here. And if I feel this bad and am this far behind and have accomplished this little by this point, then if it's only going to get worse from here, then I can't do it. It's not worth it. But I'm trying to get better, and this is one thing that I'm really focused on changing my mindset about, because the more shame that I feel, the more paralyzed I am. And in order for me to make changes and grow from here, I have to sort of let go of some of this shame. So if anybody else is struggling to cope with feelings of regret? I think all of us probably are. Yeah, you hear a lot people say, like, I don't have any regrets because it made me who I am today. But of course, if you don't like who you are today, then you probably have some regrets, and that's just life. I know for me, I don't know if it's because of my ADHD, but I've always had a pretty much impossible time, like, future planning, or like long-term gratification is like not a thing for me. I have always made decisions based just on me right now and like what I want and what I need right now, and future me is like a totally different entity that can handle the consequences later, but like that's not my problem right now. And after 30 years of living like that, I'm starting to realize what a disservice I've done to myself by making decisions that way. And so I'm really trying to change my perspective on this, and so I'm going to tell you about it. And I know some of this is going to sound very obvious. A lot of these statements are sort of like cliches that I've been hearing people tell me my whole life, and maybe my frontal cortex or whatever took longer to develop than others, so I guess wasn't in the place to like receive and comprehend these ideas until now. I would always think like, yeah, maybe for you, but not for me. But here we are. So if these are obvious to you, then good for you for being smarter than me, I guess. But I'm just going to share my thought process. So, number one, of course, the regret is so painful that it can really be hard to kind of get out of your head, especially if you feel like you've kind of messed up your life so much that now you're like, how am I ever going to undo what I've done? That's how I feel. But the simple, like, logical fact is that no amount of ruminating on these things is actually going to amount to anything. Like, no matter how much we think about it, stress about it, what we've done, we've already done. It's already happened. We cannot go back and change the past. And of course, yes, we hear this all the time, but you kind of sometimes have to be reminded that the ruminating is not actually going to get you anywhere. The purpose of the regret that we feel is to learn from those mistakes that we made, to learn from those experiences, and not make them again. Like, really, that's the purpose of the pain that we feel when we regret a decision. The consequence is that we're meant to learn from that experience. So, it's funny, during those years of my life that I was paralyzed and already feeling regret for the years that I had wasted, the shame that I felt kept me from making any changes. And so it took me too long to sort of realize that I needed to learn from the way that I felt, and that was the only way to stop me from feeling that way anymore. But recognizing that that is the purpose of the pain is not to just keep us in pain forever, but it's to teach us and to give us an opportunity to learn from that experience. So that's a big one. The second thing that I really struggled with and really had to change my perception of is comparing your situation that you're in to that of your peers. And this is a callback to the social media video because, of course, without the internet, I would have no idea what everybody that I went to high school with was doing right now. And maybe I'm not meant to know, if that makes sense. Because it's really, really hard to see these people that really thrived during this period of my life where I was not doing well, and to see them now living lives that I had once pictured for myself. But another thing that I try to remember about that is that there are always going to be people that are doing better than you, that are more successful and more fulfilled and more happy. And there are also people that are doing worse and, who maybe didn't even have the opportunity to live this long, or who got into more trouble when they were younger, or who had worse experiences, who wasted more time. But you're not really going to know about those people because they're not really going to share that. So if we're comparing ourselves to others, it's natural to look at people who are doing better and then let that make you feel worse. More guilt, more shame, more paralyzing. And so that does absolutely no good. And so that's part of this social media pruning that I'm doing to just not have to see that if it's not relevant to me. And in that same category, the only person that you should ever be comparing yourself to is yourself. And again, this is a cliche that I've heard. People have told me this throughout my life. Compare yourself only to your past self. But it was like in one ear out the other. And I was like, okay, maybe that works for you, but like, that doesn't mean anything to me. But I see it now. I get it now that I can't just like, snap my fingers and suddenly have a career and have a marriage and have a family. That's impossible. It does no good. But what I can do is make small changes every day to do better than I was doing yesterday or last week or last year. And in doing that, me today is already a happier, healthier version of me last week. And when you've been stagnant for so many years in a row, that feels huge. It's motivating, it's inspiring, and really it's all that you can do. So that's a big one. And finally, the last topic I want to touch on with this is that I think most of us had visions kind of throughout our life, but starting when we were quite young, of what we thought our life was going to look like, okay? So when I was in high school, when I was like a freshman in high school, I wanted to be engaged by 19, married by 20, and having kids at 21. I had visions of being a stay-at-home wife and mother. I thought that's the only reality that would make me happy. And then I've had different kind of iterations of this like idea of what my life would be when I grew up throughout my adolescence. And again, I see my peers living the life that I had pictured for myself. And here I am. Now I'm 30. I am none of those things. And that's another aspect of this that can be really hard to cope with, letting go of these dreams that you had for your life. And the way that I'm dealing with that is I'm accepting and letting myself be open-minded to what happiness and fulfillment could look like for me. As an adult now, I see other mothers really struggling, especially young mothers. I see people getting married and having kids with the wrong people. And I feel grateful that I didn't jump into anything. I mean, obviously looking back at the immature mindset that I had at 19, that probably would have been like the worst thing that I could have done, was get engaged, get married, and have kids at that point in my life. So even though the vision that I had for my life, if I followed those steps, was so perfect, I have the perspective now to understand that what I thought I wanted probably wasn't what I actually would have wanted for my life. And alternatively, I know that there are scenarios that I could end up in that would make me happy and fulfilled that I have not even conceived in my mind yet. And I know that because every year I learn about new jobs that exist, like new jobs, not new, but like new to me. I learn about jobs that exist that I didn't know or like never even thought of before. And I think to myself, like, wow, how cool. If I had known that that was an option when I was younger, maybe I would have pursued that, you know? And that like concept applies across the board as far as like, I have no idea what opportunities I could be met with in the future that will completely like transform my life, and make me happy and fulfilled. I'm learning new paths in life exist all the time. And so being open-minded to the fact that something could happen, I could meet somebody or have an opportunity or make a decision that feels small in the moment, that could completely change the trajectory of my life, even at 30, which I know is not old. But yeah, that could change the course of my life and lead to real happiness and fulfillment. And like, this YouTube channel is sort of a small example of that. Like, I never really, even when I posted my update video, I had no intention of doing this as like a regular thing. But I'm really enjoying it. It's making me happy. It's giving me some semblance of purpose and a creative outlet, and and it's just not something that was even on my radar even just like a couple months ago. So that's how I'm dealing with that, is knowing that like there are 1,000 ways to be happy and live a good life. And so it doesn't help to kind of count yourself out if you didn't achieve the one picture of a good life that you had in your mind, you know? So that's what I wanted to talk about in this video. Before I go on the topic of regret, I guess, for your past, kind of, I did want to address one thing. I received my first like really negative comment on here, which I think means I'm probably doing something right, honestly. But I deleted it instantly because it's important to me to keep the comment section like a positive, supportive place. But in hindsight, I kind of wish that I had left it and responded to it, so I'm going to do that here. And the comment was on the video where I talk about being groomed by a narcissist. And the comment was left by Shirley. Shout out to Shirley. And to paraphrase, she basically said, "You chose to be with this person, so you're not a victim." And, you know, for nearly a decade, I agreed with that. There are a few different angles that Shirley could have been coming from with that comment. I don't know, maybe her husband left her for a teenager, or maybe Shirley likes to date teenagers herself. But I think most likely Shirley was probably a victim of grooming and or narcissism in her life, and was either invalidated by others, or she herself does not want to identify as a victim. And again, I've been there, but I just want to say to Shirley that if you were in a relationship where there was a power imbalance in any way, whether it be from age or physical strength or financial power imbalance, there are many reasons why it is not just so simple to leave an abusive relationship. And if you stayed in an abusive relationship because you felt like you didn't have a choice, then that's not your fault. It's not your fault what happened to you, and it's not your fault that you were treated badly. And I hope that you can learn to forgive yourself for what happened to you. And if that's not the case, then I hope you have the day that you deserve. So on that note, thank you guys for watching. I love you so much, and I will see you in the next one. Goodbye.